Okay, welcome back. It's been a while since my last video. I've been really busy here in the shop, which is good for business, but not good for YouTube. But I'm covering a lot of great topics I haven't actually covered, believe it or not, in 500 plus videos. So there'll be a lot of great new content coming out on different subjects covering more aspects of Ford vehicles. Case in point, today we're working on a 2005 Ford F-150 4x4, and we'll be showing you how to change a rear pinion seal. It seems to be a hot topic, and this procedure applies for Dana axles, Ford axles, front, rear. It doesn't matter. It's all done the same way, and there's a few tips and tricks I've learned throughout the years that are tried and true that I want to show you today from start to finish. So let's go check it out. Okay, what you're going to want to do is have your vehicle in park. Preferably the front wheel's chocked. Make sure you're on a flat surface. And then we're going to get the jack underneath our rear differential right here. And we're going to lift it just enough so the rear tires are off the ground, like you can see right there. And then we're going to get underneath it with our jack stands. Probably about that height right there, so we can get it onto the axle to support it. And then we can work on this safely. So we're going to go ahead and jack it up high enough. Okay. Get these placed like so. I'm going to let it back down onto them slowly. Like that. There we go. Okay, so with our front wheels chocked so we can't roll, and the back end supported by jack stands, we're going to come into the vehicle here and we're going to put it into neutral and then turn the key back off. Okay, and there it is. Very obvious pinion seal leak. Now, just because it's leaking doesn't mean the seal is bad, and that's the only concern or reason why it started leaking in the first place from wear and age. It can also be from worn driveline components that are causing excessive vibration, and it'll wear out that seal on there. In this case, the drive shaft U-joint's actually worn out, and it's vibrating so much back here that took out the seal. Plus, there's a lot of miles on this truck. But you can see this is a recent leak, and the drive shaft just killed it. So it's a good idea to check that before you go any further. Okay, now the reason why we have the axle off the ground and the vehicle in neutral is because we want to be able to hit these bolts directly on. You can get to these two just fine, but you can't get to these two on the top because of the driveline angle here. So you might strip them and have problems, and they're already a weird design of 12.12 millimeters. So you want to hit these directly on. With it being neutral, we're allowed to do that. Also, before you take this drive shaft off, you want to mark the drive shaft flange and the pinion flange together. Just one side, a little paint mark on there, and you cannot mess it up that way. And what this will do is it'll keep the drive line balance, and it'll also keep from a stack up of rust tolerances on there, causing a new vibration. So there's multiple reasons why you want to do this. So we got that marked, and there are sockets and extensions out there with a swivel, and I'll link to it down below, they're made just for this. They're 12 point and 12 millimeter, and they're also a swivel, okay, on there, so you can get to these at a better, better access. But this is how it looks. We're gonna go ahead, just start taking them out, nice and straight on like that. We'll get to the side here so you can see a little bit better. There we go. And you just keep spinning around. You can see how loose this drive shaft is. Definitely has some U-joint concerns. Now this last one, we're going to take it out, but we're going to keep a few threads in. And the reason being is this flange is stuck big time, usually, to the pinion flange. So you want to break those free first. So it's a few threads, just like that. And then we're going to spin it around to the other side, away from that bolt. And we're going to hit the drive shaft flange right here. You don't want to hit right here on the drive shaft. You want to hit right here so you can break the bond of the drive shaft flange to the drive shaft, the pinion flange here. So let's see if I can do this on video. And you can see it doesn't take too much, and then we're free. At that point, you can come over here and loosen this. Okay, now also, if you have a multi-piece drive shaft, usually there is bolts down here. Same thing, in the 4 bolts, 12.12 millimeter. This is a one piece. This simply slides into the transfer case, so it'll slide right out once you pull the other side down. I'll show you how that looks. Get that last bolt out, hold it up so it doesn't fall on your head. Push it in a little bit, and then take your hand down here and on the other side and support it and wiggle a little bit, and it should come right out, along with some trans fluid usually. At that point, get this thing out of the way. Now what you can do down here, if it is dripping out, is just put something underneath it, a drain pan, whatever. I don't like to stick rags and stuff in here. I think it deforms the seal. I don't like doing that at all. So just clean the shaft a little bit on here, you know, of debris. And if it's dripping, just let it drip out. That's what I've done. I've never had no issues going back in and having leaks afterwards. Alright, now this one looks pretty rotted out, so we're going to go ahead and spray it with some rust penetrant so we can clean the threads on there a little bit. Okay, once the threads are clean on here, let's clean off the rust penetrant, any kind of debris with some brake clean. Get those threads exposed and make sure they're not damaged before pulling this nut off here. You don't want that. Okay, now the best way that I've found to make sure the preload is the same going back in as it is right now is to actually count the threads on here, and I also mark the location of the axle nut to the flange, okay? And that way you know, well gee, 5 threads plus the nuts matching up, we're back at the original preload, and I give it just a little bit more with the impact on there. And then also, before you ever take it off, feel the backlash, okay? So you go back and forth, you can really get a sense of how it should be when you're done. Okay, let's go ahead and count the threads real quick. Get a general idea. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Good. And then we'll go ahead and we'll mark all 3 of these together. Something like that. And you should have an idea then, going back together. At this point, we can pull that nut off of there and put it to the side. Now on this one, 1 1/8 is matching up just right on here. Hold it. Get it off of there. And it's smoking because of all the axle lube that's going through there. It's leaking pretty bad. So our marks are still in place. Make sure you don't wipe them off of your nut. And we'll keep it off to the side here for reuse. And then your pinion flange should not come off of here. It should not just fall right off. You shouldn't be able to just pull it off of there. you should have to use something like this, a regular 2-jaw puller, pressing off the center here and gripping on the outside, and that way it comes off there nice and evenly without any damage. It should be a press fit, it should not be loose. So let's get this on here. And the thing about this, I'll show you here in a second, get it snug, is you want a puller that's beefy enough and big enough to go around it all the way. This thing's long-winded. Okay. Okay, you want to make sure that these attachments here are tight so it doesn't flex. Okay? And then you want to be straight on the same axis with the pinion flange there. So you press off there straight. So the same thing, when you got the impact on here, you're going at it, you want the impact nice and straight on there too. So I get it straight by hand, like so. Looks good, right? Put your drain pan underneath. There's going to be some fluid coming out. And then we can start pressing this off of here. And it should come off pretty easy unless there's some major problem. Let me get you off to the side here. You can kind of see it there. Now once this pinion flange is off of here, this is the sealing surface for the actual seal, so you want to make sure that there's no deep grooves in here or anything like that, and if there is, to clean it up a little bit before going back together. Now what I use is a real fine Scotch-Brite, okay, and you can probably see it looks really nice now, and it's evened out on there. And real light pressure, you're just getting the ridges out of there, and you should be good to go after that. Clean it up real good with brake clean and a rag, and then make sure you put a light coating of gear oil back on here. I mean, real light coating, and make sure you clean the splines too. Going back in here, especially this side where that seal is leaking out so crazy like that. That was a pretty bad leak. Okay, here comes the fun part. What we gotta do is get the pinion seal off here without damaging anything, and it's really hard to get one of those seal pullers in here because the shaft's in the way. So we're going to clean this a little bit. Okay, what we're gonna do, find a tool. We're going to crush in the side of the sleeve. We're going to hit the seal itself. We're not trying to hit the flange at all on the differential. Go right past it, and we'll keep going. What this will do is it will, get the pressure off of there by crushing it in. And if you can, get behind it like this and start pulling it out a little bit too. Usually it's stuck in there pretty good though. So once you have it crushed in enough like that, I work it up. A little bit of a pry. And what this does is it will ruin the seal and not the housing. It works really well. See, it's starting to come now. There we go. At that point, you can pop it out by hand. It's got a lot of sealant on these. See all that? Put that off to the side here. Don't worry about it draining out. We got a lot of cleaning up to do before putting this new one on here. Now what I do is I pull out the slinger and make sure it doesn't have any huge grooves in it, anything like that. Okay, now the inside of the housing here, okay, it generally does not have any kind of sealant inside of there. It's all on this chamfered edge right here. So what I use is a small flathead, and I will get it off of there like so. You can see it right here, the reddish orange stuff right there, the rusty colored stuff. That's the sealant. So this particular screwdriver has a square drive to it, like a square shank on it. So what you can do is scrape it with that square drive on there. You see that? And you can clean it off that way, and of course use this part too. So the whole thing can be used for this, all the way up and around. Right in the edge right there. It's nice and clean now. This outer part right here, that does not matter. I mean, you don't want to build up a garbage on there. So I'll spray some brake clean on there. Okay, now while you're in here, if you have any kind of rear end noise, you can actually check your pinion bearings while it's apart like this, and you can actually change the outer one while you're in here. Put a pick behind there, and it should come right out pretty much. Get it in there. And then you can start inspecting the bearing on here. Now, this one does have a noise in it. We're not rebuilding it yet. Let me clean it off here real quick. I'll show you what I'm talking about, what to look for. Okay, so you should be able to see that. Okay, you see the regular shiny part right there? That's just fine. But when you start getting into the pitted areas, like that right there, where it's all pitted, and right there, that one's pretty bad. Got some pitting right there. That's where you start getting your noise. And you can look at your other bearing in there while it's all apart, and of course your inner race on here. So just see how bad it is. So we'll take a chance now to wipe this out real good in case there's any small metal filings right in this area or sealant that came off. Real nice and clean, and we can start reassembling it. So go ahead and make sure the bearing's back into there like so, and don't forget your oil slinger. You're gonna need that. Clean the splines on here, and then we're also going to clean the threads. So when we apply the thread locker here in a little bit, it'll actually adhere and do its job. Okay, now the only seals I recommend are the Ford seals. They seem to last the longest. And you should have a special seal installer that hits it from the front here, okay, put the pressure evenly all the way around, and then also stretches out the seal in here so on the back side the garter spring doesn't fly out while you're pounding it in. If you don't have the tool, like I don't right now because they didn't send it to me yet, they're back ordered. What you can do is pack the back side of this seal with some heavy grease so that garter spring does not pop out. And then what we're going to have to use in this situation is pieces from my ball joint kit, and we'll tap it in evenly that way. That's the most important part of it. So it doesn't really matter, but before I start putting it in, I like to quickly wipe this area from drips, and then we'll put it in here. Now first start off with a 1 pounder so you can tap it in there evenly. And just keep tapping it in there and keep looking around to see where it might be cocked in. This side's a little bit deeper, so we need to go on this side and tap it in. And that way it doesn't get too cocked in there. And see, now it's nice and even all the way around, and you just keep doing it in that fashion with the 1 pounder. It shouldn't take much more than this. See, we're getting there all the way around. Back and forth. And there it is. Now you can see down here it's nice and tight. Up here is a little gap. You want to make sure afterwards that it's nice and flush all the way around. So we'll tap this in up top there. And then we'll recheck from there. Perfect. Okay, now going back in, you want to use plenty of Loctite on both the threads, on the pinion, and the nut here. I put plenty on here, so there's no issues. And I just use the blue Loctite. That's all you really need on here. Make sure your pinion flange here is clean and greased, like so. And then you just simply line it up on here with the splines, okay? And then you should have a tool that screws into here, and then it'll suck this thing down. No one has it, and it's not really needed. You just simply tap on this evenly all the way across, real light, okay? And then you take your nut and get threaded on there. Make sure you can thread it on there before you let it thread. There we go. It goes on quite a bit actually. And then you can start ramming it home on here. Once you get it tight enough, start feeling that backlash. You can see it's way out right now, obviously. And then once it sucks it in, you can start checking that backlash and counting your threads on here. Now what's nice about this gun is that it's not too strong and it won't cinch it down and start collapsing that spacer in there. It's actually just weak enough so I can get a good feel for it. It'll actually stop when it hits that spacer. Right there. Now with the seal installed, the nuts all tightened down, we can clean the housing here. Just try not to get it up into the seal area. Wipe this down. It's going to be soaked in pretty good. If we can get most of it off of here, we'll be able to tell and test drive if the leak is gone or not. Okay, now since we are installing a new drive shaft, I'm going to be cleaning the mating surfaces of this pinion flange. I should have done it while I was off, but I forgot. Right here, you can see is where the mating part was of the drive shaft. This like triangle area, this half moon shape, I guess. Right here and here, not right here and here. So we're just going to clean up that area, and of course the centering flange. The next part is very important. You want to put plenty of Loctite once again on your bolts that are holding the drive shaft on. So we'll get them all ready now. Okay. Just sitting here ready. You can thread them in by hand when we're putting the drive shaft in, and they're all set to go. Alright, so you just get your drive shaft lined up with the transfer case and slipped into there. It should have lubricant on this internal splines already from the factory. There we go. Okay. In there, and then we'll simply line up the same pattern on here. Let's see what we got here. Just like this. Line up, get in there. You want to make sure it's centered in here, like so, and all 4 of these bolts go into here, no sweat, by hand, and this way we know it's centered in there before ever tightening anything down. Okay, there we go. Okay, the torque spec on these is 76 foot-pounds. So we'll snug them down in a crisscross pattern. Okay. Just like so. Now the easiest way to torque them down and still be able to pivot it is to have someone actually pressing the brake. They'll hold the wheel so it can't spin, and then you torque these 2, spin it 180, and we can go ahead and torque the other 2 on this side. Again, the torque spec on these is 76 foot-pounds. Hold it. Alright. Let off. All right, hold it. All right. Okay, now the fill plug is on the driver's side of almost all 4 differentials. So it should be pretty easy to spot. They don't have them on their covers like the Dodges. And it's 3/8 drive, square drive, and because it sits in there pretty tight, I recommend a 1/2 inch ratchet and adapter. And you can break it free without breaking your freaking knuckles when it finally pops. So we'll simply take this out, drain pan underneath it, and we'll see if it's still filled good enough or not, if it needs a little topping off. This one's sticking in here. we go. Alright, so of course it's a little bit low, which is fine. I have fluid here to adjust it. Now almost all of the Ford differentials, in the rear anyways, have been changed over to 75-140 instead of the old 80-90. So it's pretty pricey fluid. It is synthetic. You can see it there. That's the stuff to get right there. You shouldn't need any of the differential additive, the XL-3, the limited slip, because you didn't lose that much. So with this little pump right here, we'll be able to get in there because the ring gear's right frickin' there, so it's hard to get anything in here besides a small tube. Then we can go ahead and just start pumping it in there. And this works out great for this. I mean, gear oils, you know, it's hard to pump in. It's a lot thicker, but this is doing really well. And the fluid's only about, I say, 60-some degrees. So you want to just fill it. And once it does start coming out, you want to manually verify it's level with the bottom of the fill hole. And the reason being, I could go crazy right now and just start pouring this stuff into here. And guess what? It'll actually be spitting back out in all reality. It's not actually filled. So give it time to be level out in there and get to all the areas. This one's taking quite a bit. Usually they don't take this much for a pinion seal leak. Alright, now at this point, just let it drain out till it's pretty much level. I mean, right now, a few drips here and there. It's good. It's gotta fill other cavities in there by the pinion and all that stuff yet. So while it's dripping, let's go ahead and just wipe down our plug in the side here. And we'll put some thread sealant on here. High temperature thread sealant, just like that, and we'll go ahead and plug it off. And then once this thing stops, just give it a little bit more, like that. And you're good. It's literally just a plug. Little brake clean. And that's it. Replace the seal, check the fluid, go for a test drive, make sure there's no leaks, and that's all there is to replacing a pinion seal and getting that preload back on the pinion bearings. It's very simple. Alright, let's go for a little test drive. We've done a lot to this vehicle. Power steering lines, CV boot, ball joints, stab links, brake leaks, drive shaft, pinion seal, and of course, as you may be able to hear, there's still you know, pinion and carrier bearing noises back there in the differential. He knows about it. He's holding off for obvious reasons. It's very, very expensive, and it's going to be one heck of a job back there, I tell you. So for right now, let's go for a test drive. Make sure everything works fine. Engagements are fine. No vibrations. Nothing weird like that. And no leaks, obviously. That's a good thing. can't see me very well. It's getting dark out, but oh, I just want to take you for a drive. It's the best part of a big job like this. Is a big job. Best part of a big job like this is going for the road test afterwards, and everything sounds good, feels good, and of course you come back and there's no leaks. It's the best. You got a sense of accomplishment. You really fix something instead of just throwing parts at it.